What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Front Yard Fantasy mock draft analysis video. This week, we are going to be going over the draft we did on Monday, August 2nd, live on stream with our good friend at JB Cho Knows on Twitter. This was a SuperFlex PPR redraft mock draft that we went through. So redraft league, SuperFlex, meaning you can start up to 2 quarterbacks instead of the normal one, and PPR, meaning point per reception. For those of you who are unfamiliar, I wanted to talk about a couple different teams this week. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the draft board for us to take a peek at. Last week, the previous week, we did a half PPR redraft mock, and there were some striking similarities in this draft, but like every mock draft we do, it went a little bit differently. Two of the teams I wanted to talk about started out very similarly to the teams that drafted from that same position last week in the half PPR mock, but they both went very different directions this week. Those two teams are JB Cho Knows drafting out of the 6th spot and Methodical drafting out of the 10 spot. And if you remember, Methodical actually drafted from the same spot last week in the half PPR Superflex redraft and started the draft the same way, Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson. And interestingly enough, JB Cho did not draft with us the previous week, but the person that did draft out of the 6th spot also started their draft the same way, Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers. We're going to dive into JB Cho Knows drafting out of the 6th spot first, but both these teams went very different directions after they started with 2 strong quarterbacks. So the biggest strengths for JB Cho Knows teams are, obviously, we can start with the quarterbacks we talked about, Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers. There's only one other team that we'll talk about next that has comparable quarterbacks, 1 and 2. But after that, JB Cho just hammered running backs in the next rounds. You got 3 running backs in a row, Joe Mixon, David Montgomery, and Darrell Henderson to lock up that running back core. And this running back core down to the 3rd running back is one of the best, if not the best in the league. I think only the person drafting out of the 12 spot who started Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, Chris Carson has a better first 3 running backs. What this did, though, starting QB running back, locking up those positions for the season, was create a little bit of a vacuum at wide receiver. But JB Cho got one of the best values at receiver in this entire draft with Robert Woods there in the 6th round. Robert Woods should be in that wide receiver 1 conversation this year. So to grab a wide receiver 1 in the 6th round as your first wide receiver, great value. After that, though, it does get murky. Kenny Golladay on a new team with a quarterback that we don't know if is the real deal. I've been shying away, but there is that upside because of the talent with Kenny Golladay. Will Fuller with Tua on a new team as well. We don't know what that's going to look like. He's had that injury history. He's suspended for 1 game. Just a lot of question marks. But again, when you're drafting wide receivers in this range, there's not many more with more upside than Kenny Golladay and Will Fuller. The rest of the wide receivers that he's got there, he's got Elijah Moore and Darnell Mooney. So again, just a lot more question marks. These are more upside plays, hopeful plays that they will turn into something this season. Overall, I like this team, but there are major question marks at wide receiver and at tight end with Evan Ingram. But overall, it's a solid team. The X factor, the game changer that's going to make this team a real competitor this year, a team that can win it all, is Kenny Golladay and Will Fuller specifically, the 2 players we talked about. They've got the talent. They've got the upside. We just got to see if they can put it together on their new teams. The next team I wanted to talk about, we alluded to it earlier. It's another team. The only other team that started quarterback is Methodical drafting out of the 10 spot. Yet again, strength, quarterback. We know this. Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson. That's right up there in terms of quality with Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers. So he is set at QB for the whole year. But instead of going running back in the next 3 rounds, Matt did something very different from JB Cho, and he hammered wide receiver, grabbing, and I don't even think it's arguable, the best starting 3 wide receivers in the league with DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, and Amari Cooper. Those top 3 wide receivers will carry him throughout the season. He doesn't have to worry about that position at all, barring injury. And then the next round, he went with a tight end. So through 6 rounds, Matt has locked up his quarterback position, has a stud tight end, one of those top tier tight ends up there with Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, George Kittle, Mark Andrews, TJ Hawkinson, Kyle Pitts. I draw the line before Kyle Pitts, but I know Kyle Pitts is included in there for some. So for the sake of this mock draft review, I'll put him in there. But you locked up the tight end. You've got absolutely superstar wide receivers, 2 superstar quarterbacks. But the biggest weakness of this team, and it's obvious that he knew this going into this, that this was going to be the weakness of his team, is that running back position. But I've said this before, and I'll say it again. That's okay to leave the draft uncomfortable at running back. There are always injuries that happen. There are always players that blow up on the waiver wire. Think James Conner, Phillip Lindsay, these guys that you can grab that will contribute to your team. Nyheim Hines last year. I know he was disappointing some weeks, but he was a solid contributor. So I actually love what Matt did at the running back position, even though it is his biggest weakness. He grabbed some high upside guys and some guys with guaranteed work. Chase Edmonds is going to get work there in Arizona, even though James Conner is going to eat into it. Raheem Mostert is in that Shanahan offense. If he's the guy, then he's going to be super valuable for your fantasy team. Damian Harris has a shot at being a workhorse back for New England. David Johnson is a running back on the Houston Texans. Somebody has to carry the ball there. Nyheim Hines showed last year how valuable he is in the passing game, and then he took a last-round shot on a guy in an ambiguous backfield with Devin Singletary. I think Zach Moss will be the starter there, but Singletary was a great guy to pick up as a last-round shot. So while that is his biggest weakness, the running back position, he also took a lot of smart picks with players that could turn into weekly contributors on his team, and he's absolutely locked up at quarterback, wide receiver, and tight end. The reason I wanted to highlight those two teams, guys, is even though they started very similarly, they went very different directions after that as far as running back and wide receiver, and both of them came out with teams that I would be happy with leaving a draft. If I had to pick one, it would be Matt's, but my own personal bias leads towards zero RB teams. JB Cho put together a really awesome team as well. Guys, that is it for today's mock draft analysis. We dove into those two teams who started similarly but went through different strategies to finish their draft, and showing how both of those strategies can lead to a successful team going out of the draft. So don't be afraid to take the draft as it comes to you. If it's showing you running backs and you're usually a zero RB guy, take those running backs. You can put together a good team. And if it's showing you wide receivers and you're nervous about the running back position, don't be afraid to punt it and try to grab some value late. We will be back next week with another mock draft analysis. We're going to be doing a standard redraft league, mix it up a little bit. So make sure you guys tune in for that. But until then, adios, everybody.